Welcome to today's presentation, Acumatica Tips and Tricks, the Q4 2025 edition. I'm Darcy Borio with acu-connect, and our presenters today are Chris Joko with DSD and Dennis Easter with Algorithm. Thanks so much, guys, for agreeing to join us. We did this session a year or two ago, I think, and it was really well attended, and people really enjoyed it. So we asked you guys to come back and share some of the latest tips and tricks for us. Just a quick minute before I hand it off to Dennis and Chris. As we always do, we want to just give you a quick little overview of who acu-connect is for those of you who don't know. And so the acu-connect mission is to provide Acumatica customers, partners, ISVs, and employees with opportunities to learn, share, and connect. I won't take up too much more time, but you can learn more at acu-connect.com. We are an independent nonprofit organization completely funded by our sponsors. So I do just want to take a minute and give them some publicity here. The sponsors that sponsor acu-connect really show their commitment to the Acumatica ecosystem. We always encourage people to do business with our sponsors because they're committed to our partners and customers and are investing in Acumatica and will be around for the long haul. So take a quick look at our sponsors. And then just one last thing I want to do before I hand it over is tell you about some upcoming events we have. So we, on December 4th, are going to be having our virtual happy hour networking holiday edition. If you haven't been to these, they're real fun. We try to kind of make it a mix of business and fun and give everyone a chance to turn on your cameras, or if you're shy, you don't have to, but just kind of network in a more casual environment and get to know some of your peers a little bit. And we also, as always, will do our What to Know Before You Go session before Acumatica Summit. We're going to have Michael Shockley from Acumatica joining us to share what's going to be new, since we all know we're going to have a whole new venue and lots of new things to learn about what to expect in Seattle. And then, of course, every year at Acumatica Summit, since I think 2019, we've had a session. Every year it's always been at 3 o'clock on Sunday. I'm assuming it's going to be, although we don't have final confirmation yet. So if you're booking your flight, please do plan to come early. We're going to have some quick updates about the organization, and we're also going to provide you lots of in-person networking time during that time frame. So please do take a look. You can see it all on our events page. You can scan that QR code to go directly to the events page and register. And with that, I shall stop sharing and hand it off to Dennis and Chris.
Thanks, Darcy. Darcy, do you mind making me presenter so I can share?
That would make sense.
There we go. Hold on one sec. Gotta accept all these little changes. Let's see. Oh, it's not letting me. Let me try to share again.
I'll make you an organizer. Let's just do that.
Oh no.
I think we lost Chris. So Dennis, do you want to?
Started here, so let me go ahead and
Here we go. Let's give it a shot.
I'll go ahead and let us stay with the agenda.
Sure. There we go. All right. Hopefully you guys can see my screen okay. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Chris Joko. I'm the Principal Solutions Architect for the Acumatica team here at DSD Business Systems. Love doing these presentations for acu-connect. Today, Dennis and I have put together a an overview of some of the cool things that we love about Acumatica 2025 R2. And I'm going to start with some of my favorites. We're going to talk about some of the new enhancements to the modern UI with the color-coded status indicators, give you a sneak peek at some of the updates to the field service and production schedule boards. Something that I've been playing with a lot is the AI Studio within Acumatica to kind of harness some things from different AI sources. And then I'll end on some of the new generic inquiry development tools that have come out with 25 R2. And then I'll hand it over to Dennis to kind of talk about some new features in distribution with the sales order orchestration, automated cross-sell recommendations, which is also kind of AI machine learning driven, and then show you some of the new views for work center capacity and scheduling, and then talk about some dashboards with the modern user interface. So with that, if you guys have any questions, throw those things into the chat and we'll just jump right in. So give me one sec here. So the first thing that I really wanted to kind of talk about today with Acumatica 2025 R2 is the fact of the new kind of modern user interface and Acumatica kind of driving more visual cues when we are looking at transactions, right? So if I go into my sales orders tab here within Acumatica, I have a list of my sales orders and I have various statuses, whether they're open, they're on hold, whether they're shipping, maybe they're on credit hold or some sort of risk hold, or maybe these orders are canceled. Within Acumatica now with the new modern user interface, we have these color-coded statuses to really help us kind of from a visual aspect kind of trigger us as far as what kind of where we're at. So it's a lot more obvious now in 2025 R2 what status a particular transaction is in. So, and this is all over in Acumatica, all of the transactional screens that are in the modern user interface, whether the status is open, you can see that it's blue. If it's on hold, it's going to be like an orange yellowish type color. If it's on some sort of credit hold or risk hold, I believe that that's going to be in more of a reddish color. And then if the transaction is completed, or canceled, it's going to be a kind of a gray color. So these new color-coded statuses really make it easy for us in Acumatica to kind of know where we're at. So that's kind of my favorite thing. That's one of my, new features in 25 R2 that I really like to point out, especially to customers that are upgrading from previous versions that are now getting the new modern user interface with Acumatica 25 R2. So that's my first thing, right? Number two, they have made, one of my biggest things that I love how Acumatica is working towards is improving the different schedule boards that we have available in Acumatica, starting with the field service dashboard, our field service calendar board, right? So now with the maps integrated directly into the scheduling board, we could see where these particular things are taking place. We now have drag and drop, real drag and drop capability, so I can drag this to any particular field service technician. And then when I have that highlighted, Acumatica can start to kind of find those particular items on our calendar board or on our map. We can do better filtering here with Acumatica. We can kind of look at by skill, or if I need to filter here by skill. So Acumatica has made this a lot more intuitive and a lot easier to use, both from the field service perspective and from our production scheduling board. So, here in Acumatica now, we have better ways to see kind of that Gantt chart of all of the different scheduled production orders that are in play that also include different work centers. And if you're using machinery, you can see those machineries as well and see what's being utilized at any particular time. So if you need to drag and move or reschedule any kind of these production orders because they may be running over each other, it makes it way easier for us to kind of see those particular things. They also have these little icons that kind of tell us, whether the things are late. You might get a little lightning bolt to tell us if there's low material. So then maybe we don't have enough material to finish a particular production order. These things are built in here as well. So again, just giving us a better view of what we have in the warehouse or in our production facility, whether things are late, really just kind of getting that view that we've been sorely missing from both the production side and from our field service side.
So Chris, you might have just answered this question, but someone asked, is the calendar board only available in the services module?
So this calendar board, yes, is only available in the services module, and the production schedule board, I believe, is only available if you have the advanced planning and scheduling module in Acumatica. Cool. Any other questions that popped up, Darcy? So far, so good?
Not seeing any right now.
Awesome. So one of the things that, I really want to talk about here with Acumatica is the starting or the incorporation of different AI tools. For multiple versions, we have already had AI working within Acumatica with our anomaly detection, right? So if you haven't utilized anomaly detection, we have those things that are already kind of built into finance, where Acumatica can analyze accounting transactions to see if there are trends that are not standard with your different GL codes. Like if you have an expense account that typically ranges within a certain dollar value and something spikes, maybe somebody fat fingered something for a particular period, Acumatica's GL anomaly detection really helped kind of point those things out, where you can review and determine whether those transactions are valid or not. And that has existed probably for the last 2 or 3 releases of Acumatica. In 24R2 and 25R1, that anomaly detection was brought out into more of the GIs, right? So in our generic inquiries, we actually had the ability to analyze margin data, those kind of things, costs in AP. So those things have been expanded as well. So we had, if you had those, if you were on 25R1 or 24R2, we had machine learning AI GL anomaly detection for like our sales order margin analysis, where you guys can track, whether or not what you wanted to track as far as an anomaly, right? So if we went to our interface option here, mark that we wanted to detect anomalies in our sales order margin analysis, we can specify what are we analyzing, the margin percentage, by date, by inventory ID. So when we view these particular inquiries, we had the ability to point out whether or not we had significant anomalies where we expected a certain margin value, but we were way under or way above that. So Acumatica has had these things built in, and if you pair these with take these GIs and put them in business events and things like that, you can have these send out notifications for specific transactions that hit specific anomaly, right? Whether it's significant or medium, right? So we had these kinds of filters that could tell us whether or not, we had some giant or some medium-sized anomalies with our data. So these tools have actually already existed. If you hadn't used them already, they are there. So you can build generic inquiries to help us determine whether or not costs are incorrect. They've expanded this in 25R2 to production generic inquiries so that we can see variances in labor and material costs. So these things from an AI perspective are there ready to be used within Acumatica. But another feature that they've added in 25R2 is to help with everyday tasks within Acumatica. So if there are things that you want Acumatica to go out and do, get new descriptions, get some competitive information on the products that you're selling, Acumatica now in 25R2 has allowed us to integrate with your favorite AI tools like ChatGPT or Claude, and you can build large language model prompts. And we had a client come to me that basically makes cottage cheese, and they needed to get up, because of milk commodity pricing, they needed to get up to the minute information. So I've hooked up my Acumatica system to ChatGPT, and I created a prompt that gets the most up-to-date commodity milk prices, including class 1, 2, 3, and 4. What's the current price per hundredweight? What different regions changed for the pricing? And what I wanted to do with this information is output it back into a custom field that I created on the inventory screen. So with ChatGPT, I was able to feed this prompt to Acumatica and to pull information like the inventory ID. So if I wanted to test this out and grab my milk item, the prompt itself is grabbing information. So this is our input. I want the inventory ID and the description, and currently what I have in my field for commodity info. And then I want to spit this response out and put that information back into that commodity info. So if I look at my prompt, this is what it's getting from Acumatica, my inventory ID, my description, and this creates a button on the stock item screen. So here's my button, get commodity info. And when I go into the stock items here, I'm just going to refresh my screen. You're going to see either this button up here, or it's going to exist in the actions menu. And I just favorited this particular item. But if I go to my description tab, I've added a new field for commodity information. And if I hit the button here, this is now going to go out to, in my case, ChatGPT, get current commodity information for the milk and throw it into this description here. And so now I can see kind of like what my class prices are, what my regional variations are, the trend per Midwest, Northeast, California, and then the different market drivers. So I can utilize things like what I would typically do when I just go out to ChatGPT, type it up a prompt to get some information. I can actually let Acumatica talk to ChatGPT by itself and pull that information back into my screen so that I have this moving forward. So this is a cool little thing. I've done it with getting competitive pricing to see how my pricing compares to other customer or other distributors that are selling the same products as I am. We can use this kind of prompts to generate closure notes through CRM. We can use these things to help us, I even took a sales order summary and I'm throwing all the order information into a description field so that maybe I want to put that on my GI so I can kind of get an idea of what items are being ordered on that particular order. So any way that I can use, AI to kind of help my everyday process, that's what we're adding. That's what was added here with these LLM prompts.
Hey, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
That is super cool. Thank you for sharing that. There are a couple questions I just want to get to real quick before you move on. The most recent one is, does that cost extra? I think that they're referring to the whole integration of the GPT model that you just showed.
I mean, you would probably want to make sure you have a subscription to ChatGPT, but the baseline is built into Acumatica.
Great. And then this one says, kind of a GI question, is Acumatica getting any better about preserving unique GI IDs when you move inquiries from one system to another? When there are screen IDs, we get clashes and typically then edit the XML directly. Not sure if this is changing at all.
Yeah, so that hasn't changed much, but I have in my implementation team and my consulting team, when we publish generic inquiries to our screens, we have our own numbering sequence. We typically don't let we don't just use the standard numbering sequences that Acumatica generates for us. We will create our own numbering scheme so that when we do move it to other customers, it doesn't collide. But other than that, yeah, no, it still has kind of that same preserving the same screen ID.
Okay, we just got 2 more questions, and I know you got a lot to cover. So, can you this going back to the GIs? Can you customize the status colors to colors of your choice? Are you only allowed the defaults?
So, from the modern user interface, I believe you can change some of these through a customization package. But if you're talking just on the GI perspective, you can, if you are to use on the results grid, and I want to format like a particular field, like maybe I have the order number, when we go into the style, you always have the ability to kind of utilize these different colors that are available here. But that's kind of what we've been given in our GI tools.
Okay, we've got a lot more questions coming in. Do you want to keep pausing for them, or should we hold them till the end?
So I just had one more thing before I turned it back over to Dennis, and it's also in regards to the generic inquiries, right? And so when it comes to our generic inquiries here, give me 1 second here. We do have some new tools that make it, for the kind of the more advanced GI writers, we can actually utilize what we call GIQL, which is the generic inquiry query language. So rather than selecting your data sources manually, we now have an advanced option that you guys can create SQL statements directly from here. So if I wanted to select what tables that I'm pulling from, I can grab from the pxobjects.so order, and we could say as so1, and then I can just come in here and say select so1.order type and so1.order number and so1.customer ID. So now if you prefer to kind of type out your generic inquiry, you have this ability now to just be able to generate this information. Oops, let me see, spelled that wrong, px objects, save that. So if you prefer to write queries manually, you now have that ability, and then you can then see kind of based on this query language that you just written, you'll have the ability to just kind of see that GI right away. So rather than going through all the normal steps of picking the different tables, then relating the tables, and then putting your grouping and your sorting, and then choosing the fields, if you wanted to, you can kind of start doing your own. If I wanted to do inner join px.objects so line, and I'll say so2, and then we could say on so1 dot order type equals so2 dot order type and so1 dot order number. So now I've done a join, and now if I want to grab like the so2 inventory ID, now here, once I've saved this, now I'll be able to kind of view that inquiry. So let's just use the preview here. Now I can actually use query language rather than using the traditional kind of manual adding of tables and manually adding of joins and fields and so forth. So lots of new options here with Acumatica, you know, from a AI perspective all the way down to the GIs. So that's what I had prepared for you guys today. Darcy, do you want to run through the questions before we turn it over to Dennis?
You know, actually, that was so amazing. Thank you, Chris. We did have one question to ask if we're going to make the recording available yet. Yes, we will. Maybe what we'll do, because I think you have covered some of the questions since they came in, is maybe we'll have Dennis go ahead and you can look through the questions and then we can put it back on to you when Dennis is done to answer any that you didn't already cover. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Perfect.
Dennis, you ready? I'm going to stop sharing for a second here.
So we'll come back to all your questions that Chris might not have gotten to after we hear from Dennis.
All right. So my presentation is not going to be nearly as impressive as Chris's. Chris is a great technical guy as well. I'm just a guy that studies Acumatica. And so there are several things that I want to talk about. And one of them, the first one is order orchestration. So big word, orchestration, it really just means picking the best place to ship it from. And in that, a couple of things that they've done inside of Acumatica is that you'll notice on the sales order screen that they have added a field called orchestration status and fulfillment strategy. So let's talk about what those mean. So what's an orchestration status and the fulfillment strategy? So as you think about warehouses operations where you have multiple warehouses, and perhaps you have really the same inventory in all your warehouses, and you really want to make sure that you're getting the product shipped from the warehouse closest to the customer, which makes sense, reduce the shipping costs. And so that would be a fulfillment strategy based upon the destination priority. And this relies on shipping zones that you would set up, where each shipping zone, you identify the states that are included. So there's still some limitations there. And then as you define your customer locations, the system will then say, okay, which warehouse fits into this priority to ship into this zone? And so when you have similar inventory across your warehouses, then the destination priority fulfillment strategy is really where you want to look. Another option is warehouse priority. And so warehouse priority really comes into play when you're looking at your warehouses. They've got different products. Maybe you've got one warehouse that specializes in a particular type of product. Maybe you've got some perishable inventory, but to where it's not the customer location that drives where you ship it from, rather than the item that is on the sales order. And so that's another way that you can choose to decide which warehouse to ship from. And so this is, the system taking that default warehouse that you would set up on the customer or the customer location and expanding its capabilities based upon product and helping you really automate that process. And so, as is often the case with Acumatica, you can go to the actions menu on the sales order and orchestrate the order one at a time. But why would you do that when you can mass process the orders? So in the process orders grid, once you've turned on order orchestration, then there is a new action that you can do. And the orchestrate order then will take the criteria that you've set up and apply it to the order then so that the shipments can be created for the individual warehouses. And with this, if you're shipping from multiple warehouses, Acumatica is now helping you better manage where your inventory is shipping from and helping you to increase your customer service. And who doesn't want to increase their customer service, right? So the auto order orchestration is one of the things that is particularly of value for those customers, those users that have multiple warehouses that they ship from. Okay? So as we think of the orders, there's something else that we need to consider. That's the 6 words that changed the things that we buy. So as you're entering orders, remember when this came out years ago, some of you may not ever remember McDonald's not asking you if you want fries with that, but it was a new thing, and it's an example of cross-selling. Adding items onto a sales order for related products. And here's an interesting statistic: Amazon, because they always have that little bar on the bottom that says other customers also looked at or purchased items or buy these together. That cross-sell accounts for about 35% of the revenue. So cross-selling is a really powerful sales tool if you're using it. And so how do we make this work in Acumatica? Well, the first thing you do is you set up the parameters. And you'll notice that on the sales order preferences, there's a new tab. It's called machine learning. And so this is, again, another case where Acumatica is building in practical AI and machine learning into the solution. It's solving problems that would otherwise be very time consuming for someone to decide, well, what's a valid cross-sell item? And so one of the things that you do is you say, how far back do you want to analyze your sales? And then the process is really pretty easy. It's time consuming, so it's something that you would run the generate and approve process off hours, simply because it does take a while to do it. But the process is you generate those suggestions, and that's where Acumatica, based upon the parameters that you set, say, here are the suggestions that we think would be great for you to include as cross-sell items. And then you have the opportunity to review them on the grid and then select them. You can run this by an item class if you've got a particular class of product that you want to work with. And you can then select which cross-sell relationships you want and then add them to that item. On the item master where you've got your your relationships, then it's going to go ahead and add those to the system automatically. And so there's nothing that you would have to do in order to set them up yourself. Whereas before you would either have to create an import scenario to take your data that you probably built in Excel and put it into the system, or manually enter them. And so with this, Acumatica is taking machine learning, helping you identify those items that are key to a successful cross-sell strategy and moving forward. So this is another application, again, of how Acumatica is applying machine learning to the real world problems. The next thing that I want to talk about is the increased visibility for work center capacity and schedules. Okay, so what's new about this? Well, previously, if you wanted to see what the work center capacity and schedule is, you had to have APS. But now you don't have to. And so in this, a little explanation is that Acumatica is going to use infinite capacity loading, which means it's just going to look at the start dates, and that's where it's going to plug them into the work center. Excuse me. So whereas APS, you have a chance to schedule and sequence your orders with priority and such. If you don't have APS, this is still going to load them into the work centers based upon the routing times. But what it's going to do is simply load them up based on the order start dates or the constraint dates. And so, as you can see in the example, we are 1,200% utilized on the work center, and that's a problem. Probably not going to be able to meet those requirements. But this does give you that visibility that you lacked before. You may have created some generic inquiries to build this, or maybe use the dashboard and then try it, drilled in and try to figure out how things are going. This actually will let you look at the capacity on the work center for the week and then build in and look down at the schedule to see what that work order detail is that's consuming the capacity. So it lets you make more decisions more proactively, so you're not trying to shuffle things around as time gets crazy. Let's let you get ahead of things. And anytime that you can get ahead of a problem, you've got a better chance of avoiding it altogether. So making this available to my manufacturing customers that haven't invested in APS, I think was something that is overdue, and I'm glad that Acumatica decided to do it. And so one of the things that, and Chris talked about this earlier, is the update on the user interface. And he showed you some of the screens in that, but if you notice, he started off with a dashboard. And so there are a couple things that Acumatica has done with the dashboards. Now, if you remember your KPI tiles, like the ones that we've got over here on the screen, used to be green, red, just big colorful blocks. And so what they did with the modern UI is really kind of calm things down, made it cleaner looking, and something that has received a lot of positive feedback as I've demoed this to the prospects in the field. And so the KPI tiles, especially in the trend tiles in a dashboard, have really been cleaned up and made more modern. But probably one of the things that really made more of a difference with the dashboards is the wizard that you use to actually build the widgets. And so here's a screenshot of the wizard, and notice things are so much cleaner. And so if you built some dashboard widgets, you realize the screen layout kind of clumsy. You generally had to scroll. The caption was always at the bottom, so sometimes the caption got left off. Then you open it up and go, oh, I don't know what this is looking at. So they've made it a lot easier to build and go through that wizard to build the widgets. And you'll notice that they've made it much easier to view your filters as well. So you can actually see what the condition is that you've applied for that particular widget. So that type of user interface is it's a small thing unless you're building dashboard widgets, and then it becomes pretty important. And so Acumatica is, again, expanding that modern user interface, not just to the transaction screen, which is really important, but to those maintenance screens as well. And so that's a great investment in the user interface by Acumatica. So that's the end of what I had on my standard agenda, but I talked so fast that you guys are going to get a bonus. And so now it's time for the bonus content. We've talked a lot about the modern user interface today. Okay. One of the things that Acumatica has done, which I think may move some people to take advantage of the modern customer portal. So if you remember the old classic portal, it's pretty sparse. Wasn't really an attractive piece of software. I had some really crippling almost limitations. But they've really cleaned it up. They've created a nice landing page so that you can really start to use it to answer those 5 questions the customers are contacting your customer service team for. Make a payment, get a copy of an invoice, place an order, what's the order status. And so with this, Acumatica has not only added functionality so that you can do all of those things, but they've also cleaned up that interface. So you can see that the KPI tiles now with the current balance and the overdue balance, wow, they really need to pay the bills. It is a lot cleaner. But probably what's more important is that added functionality where on the balance overview screen, this is much like if you would go into the customer details screen, and you can see the open invoices, and then they can get a copy of the invoice, view that invoice by clicking on the invoice number. And you'll notice the blue check mark by that top invoice, and over on the right, you see that there's a proceed to pay button. And so this is where, with the power of Acumatica Payments, they have integrated Acumatica Payments into the customer portal, and now your customers can go online to pay their invoices as well, using the full functionality of Acumatica Payments. So either with credit card or ACH. And so again, expanding that functionality so that the customer portal can really repay and give you the return on the investment by taking away those questions that are most often asked of your customer service team. And this way they have the opportunity, your customers can be self-serving and take care of their issues on their time, because they may be busy during the day when you're open, but they still want to conduct business with you. Makes it a lot easier to do business with you, which is one of my 3 rules of great customer service. And so with that, I want to have a big thanks to acu-connect, but also all of you. And I will go ahead and stop sharing and pass it over to Darcy, because there are probably more questions.
Thank you so much, Dennis. That was really good stuff. I think there was a couple questions that came in, but Chris has been answering some behind the scenes in the questions panel. And so I think we're covered as far as that goes. But Chris, was there other things that you wanted to address going back through the questions? Anything you wanted to show?
The only one that I didn't, the only one I didn't answer was mostly on the how do we connect like ChatGPT. So that's something that could take some time, dependent on what what AI provider you want to use and the strategy of how you want to use it. But there are a lot of YouTube videos that are out there right now. So if you search that, there's definitely some that will show you kind of a direct way to get connected.
Okay, we have another one. Is the customer portal included with base Acumatica, or is an additional charge for that module?
I believe it's always been an additional charge. It's a module all on its own.
It is a module all on its own, and it does require that you also license CRM.
CRM.
So, that's one of those constraints that that people need to consider as you're looking at implementing a portal.
Guys, thanks so much for all these questions. These are great. And if you are looking for answers to any of these questions, you can look through the questions panel and you should be able to see any questions you might have had as well. Chris has answered them in the questions panel in addition to whatever's been answered on the screen. And we'll leave it another minute or so so you all can look through those and put in any more questions. You got these two experts right here in front of you. So let's put them to the test, right? Guys, anything else?
So one question here, there is a question from Ryan about what payment providers used in the bonus material. I'm showing Acumatica payments. Now I've heard word that there are a couple other providers that have integrated into the modern portal, but I don't have enough confidence. I can't verify that. So if you're using one of the major players in the Acumatica payment space, then you may want to ask them if they have integrated with the modern customer portal at this time.
Well, not seeing any other questions. So on behalf of Acu-connect, I just want to thank everyone for attending, and thanks for all the great questions. We love it when it's interactive, so we really appreciate that. And especially thank you to Dennis Easter and Chris Joko. We really value all your input and your sharing your expertise. That's what Acu-connect's all about. So great job today, guys. Thanks so much. And with that, we'll go ahead and end it.
Thanks everyone for joining.